Welcome back to another episode of the SRU podcast with me, my guy, Will Royal. And Will, we had the college football championship, and it was, some would say, a disappointment.
For everyone outside of the state of Georgia, yeah, it was. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of stopped watching halfway through this like second half. I just gave up. It was that bad. Not in terms of it's boring. It's more of just Georgia is out of control and put up 65 points in a single game. TCU 7 points.
Um,
Um,
but let's not say the score. We're not going to talk about that. But we will talk about how Kirby Smart gaslighted his whole entire team before the game for some reason, like saying how they don't believe the world doesn't believe Georgia deserves to be in the championship, which is crazy. They're literally undefeated, number one team in the nation. Um, Close games against Kent State. Who else did they have a close game against?
three.
Yeah,
Missouri was a close game.
I got Missouri. Like, I don't know what he was thinking of or talking about, but apparently they don't deserve to be there, which is idiotic to me, to the most. Will, you all right?
Yeah, I'm just looking over these stats right now. I'm just trying to like get a sense of um what all these talk about. And I mean, in summary, just to go over a few stats of what Georgia had, they had almost 600 yards of total offense, 350 of which came in the first half. They had 32 first downs compared to TCU's nine. They were on the field for 37 minutes compared to TCU's 23. I mean, apart from TCU scoring their one touchdown, Max Duggan rushing them in, there was a little bit of optimism. I was telling myself how like towards the end of the first quarter, Alabama was like this 5 years ago when they were down to Georgia in the national championship game. I think it was like 17-0 in that game before Bama came back and tied it, which overtime, you know how that went. And then Georgia goes on a ridiculous run. It's now 38-7 at halftime. And at that point, it was just like, this game is not worth watching anymore.
Yeah, it got to a point. I'm like, hey, maybe TCU's only down what 13-7. Hey, they can come back and win. Like it's a winnable game. Oh, Georgia scored another touchdown. TCU can still come back and win. Then Georgia scores another touchdown. Then you're like, huh, they have a chance. It hadn't hit halftime yet. Then once halftime hit, it's like, all right, a lot of stuff has to go right for TCU to come back and win this game.
Yeah.
Then end of third quarter, it's like up, yeah, this game is over with. So that's when I turned it off. I'm like, "God." I feel bad for all the TCU fans out there. JP, he was actually at the game, which was a big surprise. Well, not to us. When we shot the championship episode, we knew it was a possibility that JP would go, but he did go. What this was TCU's first championship game since like 1939 or 1938, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Back when they had Davey O'Brien at quarterback.
Yeah, over almost 100 years ago. But this is I feel bad for JP just because this is what he's been waiting for like forever since he went to TCU. No one thought TCU would even be in this position at the beginning of the year. If you told me at the beginning of the year that TCU would be in a national championship against Georgia, I would have said you're lying because ain't no way. They had a new coach, new offense coordinator. Um, their starting quarterback for the season was Chandler Morris, who made an appearance in the national championship game. He ends up getting injured. They put their starter for the past few years, Max Duggan, in. He has this incredible season. Some would say a Heisman season, which he came runner up in that Heisman race. no one thought TCU would be here at all. Let's be honest. But I'm happy to be a regional supporter of TCU that they made it and got a chance. And they actually have a pretty good recruiting class coming in. I'm gonna look that up and update everyone on their recruiting class coming in. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people from Alabama transferring to TCU. They're getting a lot of top 4-star recruits coming in. TCU has a bright future. They have a great offensive coordinator and a great offensive minded coach as Tony Dykes. And if they can build the defense like they had this year, they could easily be back in next year. So, Will?
Yeah, definitely. Do I think they're gonna make the playoffs next year? No. Do I think they're gonna make it when it's expanded to 20 or the 12 teams in 2024? There's a strong possibility, especially with the likes of Texas and Oklahoma leaving. TCU right now is in kind of, I think they're gonna, safe to say they're kind of in like this limbo position. They didn't have high expectations for them in the season. They were unranked. They were projected to finish bottom 3 of the Big 12. And then they go on this magical run. They make it to the championship game. They lose on the last second and pull off this miracle win over Michigan. And then obviously the game last night. We're not going to repeat the score. We already know it by now. But they are losing Max Duggan. They are losing Kendra Miller. They are losing Quinn Johnston. I'm blanking on his name. The cornerback.
LT. Yeah,
Yeah,
LT's
nephew. He was a Jim Thorpe Award winner. I think he's going in the draft, or if he's not, then he's old enough to get there. But like you said, they were bringing in transfer from Alabama, JoJo Earl and Trey Sanders, who were 2 really good prospects. I wish flourished at Alabama.
and also Tom Brockmeyer.
Yeah, Tommy Brockermeyer as well. But it was kind of a sad day in college football because TCU was a Cinderella story we saw going back to like October, and it just died horribly in front of us. Kind of like how we saw St. Peter's making that magical run to the Elite Eight back in March of last year and get blown out by North Carolina in the Elite Eight. But going forward, I think TCU is in good hands with Sonny Dykes. This was the right man for the job, and I think taking him from crosstown rivals SMU was the best thing they could have done. But Georgia, they were just too much for them. As much as that pains me to say, and when you have Stetson Bennett putting up 304 yards and 6 total touchdowns, it's kind of the point of like, yeah, it's time to realize that the clock has struck midnight, magic's run out.
And yeah, and what I said last episode, Bowers was going to be the X factor for this game, which he was. Had 152 yards with 7 receptions, with an average of 21.7 yards per reception, 1 touchdown, and let's not forget about Ladd McConkey. That man had a game, 2 touchdowns, 88 yards, 5 receptions with an average of 17.6.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that he would be their go-to guy at the beginning of this game?
Yeah, and then even when the game was way out of reach, you had Branson Robinson have 2 rushing touchdowns. Essentially just put the game off.
Yeah. Just Georgia, will we see them back in the national championship again next year? Maybe, most likely, honestly. I sent you.
No, continue.
I sent you earlier today. I sent you Georgia's schedule for next year. Literally the easiest schedule of all time. Here, let me pull it up.
They have one noteworthy game next year, and that is at Tennessee, and that is the penultimate game of the season.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the only game because they actually have a pretty decent team in South Carolina going into Athens the 3rd week of the season. And South Carolina did bounce back at the end of the year. They only lost 3 games. And playing Georgia 3rd game of the season, honestly, it could be a trap game for Georgia. Do I see them winning that game? Georgia winning that game, yeah. But South Carolina, they get Spencer Rattler. They getting a pretty decent transfer portal coming in. New tight ends coach from Arkansas. So I feel like South Carolina could be an X factor in the SEC East with Tennessee and Georgia, maybe. But let me read out their first what 7 games before the bye. You got UT Martin first week, Ball
Easy
State,
dub. Easy dub.
yeah, Ball State second week, South Carolina, UAB, Auburn, rebuilding Auburn to say the least. Kentucky without Will Levis,
But
maybe honestly might be a good thing for Kentucky. We'll see when that happens.
but they
Um,
do have Devin Leary at quarterback though.
oh yeah, I forgot he did transfer in. I'm not that high on him either.
Yeah.
He's a good quarterback, but I'm not super high on Devin Leary. Then you have Vanderbilt, and that's all I think about
Come
is
on.
Vanderbilt. So then they have the bye week. Then you have Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech. Their hardest games are at the tail end of the season. Missouri, they might be good. Who knows? They actually lost their best receiver to Georgia, so let's see how that goes. Ole Miss, Ken Jackson Dart play like the Jackson Dart everyone hyped him up to be this year? Probably not, but it's still Ole Miss, still a trap game. And the second to last game to the season is Tennessee. That honestly, depending on how Tennessee's quarterback play is, if they start big Joe Milton or the 5-star freshman coming in that they paid $8 million for, we will see. Them losing Hendon Hooker is a huge blow. Joe Milton has to come in playing the way Joe Milton played against Clemson and show everyone that he is a really good quarterback and how Michigan never should have got rid of him in the first place.
Yeah.
So he has an incredible arm, by the way, but I have no idea how he will play coming into next season. Well, how do you feel about the schedule?
Cupcake. That's the only word I can use to describe it. Is their out of conference schedule is possibly the most atrocious thing. It's like you're playing NCAA football on the Xbox or the PS4, and you're just seeing, you want the easy route, so you just pick all the FCS schools along with the lower ranked teams. That's essentially what Georgia is doing. You start off your game with your cupcake game, which is UT Martin. That's going to be put up probably more points than they did against TCU. Then you have Ball State, a MAC school. It's going to be like a 30, 40 point win. UAB, a school they played last year and destroyed, same thing. And then, of course, end of year against Georgia Tech. It's not the same Georgia Tech because they now have Frank Key as their full-time head coach, but it's still going to be Georgia, I think, by double digits. So Georgia basically is just going to be relying all on conference play. And apart from Tennessee and possibly South Carolina, possibly Ole Miss, the rest of their schedule is just garbage.
Yeah, I'm looking at TCU schedule for next year. For some reason, I can only find the first 3 games. They have Colorado, probably the biggest trap games of any school in the nation. Colorado just got Deion Sanders, plenty of transfers. Got the #1 transfer in the nation with Travis Hunter, who was also the #1 recruit coming in last year. Between him and like Walter Nolan, or what's his name? Was it not Walter Nolan? Or what's his name for Texas A&M? It's Walter something.
No, I think you're right, Walter Nolan. Yeah, it came from Memphis.
Yeah.
SBA.
Well, no, he had transferred to like Knoxville or something.
But yeah, like the second started is
Yeah.
SBA.
But yeah, Travis Hunter coming in. You have Shador Sanders, who's a great quarterback. Most people have him as Heisman runner for some reason.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
But I saw this that no team has done a three-peat in college football since 1932 to 1934 in Minnesota. It's hard to do. Bama tried doing it from 2011, 2012, and then 2013 they fell apart at the end. We don't talk about pick six, but it's a hard thing to do in football. Nebraska didn't do it in the 70s, or not the 70s, the 90s. Bama was never able to do it in the 60s and 70s. And Georgia, I think their biggest threat is becoming the SEC championship, most likely against either Alabama or LSU.
But I feel like if they go undefeated again, they will definitely, if they even lose the SEC championship, they're gonna make it in just because huge SEC team, yeah, and Georgia defending national champs, two-time defending national champs. So I feel like Georgia has the easiest road to going for a three-peat out of all teams.
As of right now, yeah. Well, obviously they already have the two games. They need one more.
Yeah. Also, I have a question for you, Will.
All right.
I know we all see this every time a national championship team wins. Who is the best national championship team ever? 1995 Nebraska, 2019 LSU, 2001 Miami, or this year 2023 Georgia.
And really not including any of my Bama teams in there.
Nope, did not see that at all.
Well, I was never alive for the Nebraska teams under Tom Osborne in the 90s. I was too young to remember the Miami teams from the early 2000s. So really, it just comes down to this. And I can tell you, I essentially saw both these teams live. Georgia had them for the most part, the same player they had last year. I saw this team in the SEC championship against Alabama. And then I saw the 2019 LSU team when they came to Tuscaloosa. And I say this whenever I talk about in my 4 years, the best Alabama game I've been to. Yes, the SEC championship game was a good game. And the year before when we beat Georgia in the regular season, that was also a good game. But deep down, it is that 2019 Joe Burrow versus Tua. You have so much NFL talent on that team. That was probably the closest game LSU had all year. They just blew everyone else out of the water, including Clemson in the national championship game. So I'm gonna say in 2019 LSU, as much as that hurts a little because I hate LSU, but that you look at that team and tell me a team of Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Patrick Queen, Derek Stingley Jr. There's so many other players I could have named. Grant Delpit. So many other players I'm probably leaving out because of how talented that LSU team is. And yes, Ed Orgeron did end up losing his job a year or two later. But that LSU team, I think, outside of any Nick Saban Alabama, probably one of the most talented college football teams I have ever seen.
Yeah. 1 second, Will. Yeah, LSU, out of all those teams I named, even though LSU and like Miami had the most draft picks that year, I don't know which one had the most first rounders, but it's looking like the LSU team probably is the best pick for that. You have Joe Burrow, who just won Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just won their division in the NFL this year.
Same with Justin Jefferson.
Yes, I was just about to get to that. Same with Justin Jefferson. Literally two of the best receivers in the NFL at the moment. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's a pretty decent back in the NFL. Just that team's defensively was just amazing. And then you have Randy Moss's son, who really hadn't done much in the NFL. I know he's bounced from team to team, training camp to training camp, but he was a big part of that team, and he was actually great for that team. I feel like if he would have stayed one more year, he would probably be a bigger tight end name coming out the draft.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely pick the LSU team. But if you think about that Miami team, you have You have one Hall of Famer for sure. One could be Hall of Famer, and Frank Gore. Who else was on that team? Santana Moss.
I'm
Um,
assuming the one Hall of Famer you're talking about is Ed Reed.
yeah, yeah. Was Kellen Winslow Jr. He was on that team, wasn't he?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, he was a monster before everything that's happened to him now. Um, I forgot who else they had on that team. Do you remember who else they had on that team?
I don't off the top of my head. That's
But
why I was saying like I was 2 years old
yeah,
for that team.
were you two? You were two?
Nine.
You're probably
It was
one and like a half
2001.
or something like that.
What?
I said you were probably like one and a half or something like that.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, I was not even one yet. I'm like a few months from being one. If y'all don't know, he's a 99's baby in the summer, and I'm a 2000 baby in March. So yeah. But let's get to these recruiting classes from the two championship teams. So TCU has a composite ranking of 19 recruiting class coming in, which is pretty good for how small TCU is and their recruiting classes in the previous years hadn't been like this big. And they've done a lot with a little. They have what, one, two, three, four, 11 um 11 4 stars. They actually have a guy from Briarcrest coming in their recruiting class. Well, did not know that.
Really,
Um,
who?
what's his name? Max Carroll. Oh, I've heard of him actually. I'm pretty sure he's a running back for Briarcrest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's who it is.
Yeah. Um, they have three Alabama transfers, an LSU transfer, and a Florida transfer. So TCU actually has a really good recruiting class, honestly. I know 20 is not big for most people, but like that's a good recruiting class. 11 4 stars is great, especially depending on who all comes back. I'm expecting DeMarcado to come back. Kendra Miller, who didn't play in the national championship game, was probably the one of the biggest blows for them. He is most likely coming back. They are losing their receiver Judkins, I'm pretty sure was his last name. So that's huge. Max Duggan, their quarterback. Now they have to see if Chandler Moore is going to be the guy for them. Too bad that they didn't try to get a transfer quarterback out of all the transfer quarterbacks that were transferring out.
Yeah,
Because there's not any really big name transfers transferring out, are there?
not that I can think of.
Yeah, I feel like most of them have already committed and getting ready. Because school for most schools start next week and the next 2 weeks. So if you don't have someone coming in, it's going to be hard for someone to be there for the spring and try to win that spot early or be a front runner for that spot. But let's go to Georgia. Georgia has the number 2 composite ranking um, for recruiting class, 2 5 stars and a 5 star cornerback and a 5 star edge. Gosh, a lot of 4 stars. Literally everyone else is a 4 star, and they got three 3 stars. I'm over here trying to count it in the middle of the podcast. I'm just like, yeah, just gonna have to stop counting that. They have a transfer wide receiver in Rara Thomas from Mississippi State. Me and you heard that name a few times. Then
Yeah,
Don Lovett coming in from Missouri, probably Missouri's biggest transfer of all time. Oh, best receiver that they had last year. His ranking went up coming out the transfer portal than what he had in high school. So that says a lot coming from Georgia. But they only have a 39 ranked transfer portal, but they're only bringing 2 4-star transfers in. So, yeah. Will you have anything else to say on this?
I think we wrapped up pretty good of this, if you want to even call it a national championship game. Um,
Yeah.
Later this week, we'll come out with our end of season awards along with some more college basketball because our two teams play each other tomorrow night, or by the time this episode comes out tonight.
Yeah.
Arkansas, as it stands, is a 1.5 point favorite. So we'll see about that.
I actually hope so. But good news for Arkansas, you Arkansas basketball fans and Arkansas fans in general. Nick Smith is expected to miss the rest of this month and come back February. So it looks like he's not pulling a James Wiseman and getting ready for the draft. He will actually come back and play, which is huge for Arkansas because our 3-point shooting in general has been trash since SEC play started. What we
Yeah.
Missouri last week and lost to who did we just lose to? Dang, who did we lose to? Am I tripping? We lost to Auburn. That's why I hate Auburn. They're forgivable.
Meanwhile, Bama just came off a huge win over Kentucky this past weekend, and a lot of speculation, people saying like Cal may be out of a job by the end of this year. Do you
Hey,
see that?
what did I tell you and JP last episode? I said that if he ends up leaving Kentucky, Texas would probably be a huge landing spot for him. And honestly, as a Arkansas fan and a SEC team fan, we do not want that to happen. You thought,
Especially with Texas coming in 2 years' time.
yeah, you thought Kentucky being good in the SEC team in the SEC in general, being a powerhouse blue blood. Imagine him at Texas, where he has probably 10 times the amount of resources and just the in-state recruiting wise, how he would be able to get all those people in. That would be ridiculous. I still don't think it would really matter that much. I'm just saying, like, his teams would be great at Texas. Cal has really fallen off as a top coach in the nation. I feel
Yeah.
like most other teams figuring out what their college need as a coach, and that coach is figuring out what type of players I need to recruit to come into this school for this school to be as best as they can. Like Nate Oates, he's he's a high powered mid-major coach, came in, made that with 5-star and 4-star recruits at Alabama. He's been he won the SEC 2 years ago, had a pretty good team last year, and this year, they are number one in the SEC, number 4 team in the nation at the moment. Let's talk about Eric Musselman, major coach, left an NBA team, became Nevada's head coach. Arkansas got him. Um, his identity as a coach, as like his team's identity changed every year. Last year we were a high power offense, kind of small ball team. Team before that we were even smaller ball. Wait, no, actually, team before that pretty we were pretty balanced when it came to a team. We had some centers compared to last year where we only had literally one center, and it was Jalen Williams who was Mr. Everything down low for us. And before that, we had one of the highest recruiting classes in in Arkansas history with Moses Moody coming in. He was our guy, scoring for us and everything. In his first year, he had, which was the COVID year, he had Mike Anderson's team, who was very small. A lot of people transferred out, but Mason Jones and Isaiah Joe were the go-to guys for that team. And we actually had a pretty decent team. We were on the edge. We were on the bubble for the March Madness tournament, and COVID happened. We didn't get to find out what would happen with that. But this year we have a super long, tall team, literally probably the tallest team in the nation right now. Our point guard is literally 6'7". A team that really can't score outside the arc, but we can score around the rim and above the rim. which is really good for us. So his teams have really just been all over the place. And I don't remember LSU's coach's name, but Murray State.
Oh, McMahon.
Yeah, McMahon.
McMahon.
Mike McMahon came from a mid-major team as Murray State. Coach John Morant, the number 2 player coming out when he did behind Zion Williamson. Memphis's very own John Morant. He's really got the culture of Memphis and ran with it. Let's say that. But yeah, he's a pretty good mid-major coach. This is his first year at LSU. Seems like they have a pretty good team, and he was good at recruiting because remember last year, Will, LSU entire team left. Like literally, they had no one on their roster or on scholarship.
Yep.
Yeah, Will. So how do you feel about SEC basketball and where it is now?
SEC basketball has always been a top conference, kind of along with ACC and Big Ten.
I wouldn't say they're the top conference. I feel like it's usually Kentucky, maybe Florida, maybe Florida. Yeah, maybe
sometimes
Florida.
Tennessee.
Yeah. Every once in a while, Arkansas can have a pretty decent team make it to the second round.
A couple of years ago, you had South Carolina even make it to the Final Four. But I think now they're in the right position to be a good program. You have Alabama is a top 5 team right now. Arkansas is not that far behind. LSU started out the season really strong as well.
Tennessee, even though we all hate Tennessee, but I'm pretty sure they're in the top 10.
Yeah, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida.
Missouri's up there. Mississippi State had a pretty good start to the season. Kentucky's always going to be Kentucky. You don't know what team you're going to get from them, but potentially get a really good team.
So I definitely think SEC basketball is going to be one of the more fun conferences to watch for the remainder of the year. Like obviously we still have about a little over a month left in terms of, actually a little under 2 months left of regular season play. Conference tournaments begin first week of March. So, a lot can happen between now and then, but I'm excited regardless.
Yeah. So, will you have anything else before I wrap it up?
Go ahead and do your thing.
All right. Thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn your post notification on. And thank y'all for another great year of college football. Better luck next year to all the teams that didn't make it to the national championship, and screw Georgia. And remember, Will, always smoke that big game boomer pack. See you later.